The Luminous Drift. Chapter 1. The Silence Between Stars. The ship Somna Drift moved like a whisper through the dark. Out in the still expanse, there were no starfields, only the velvet black of space, scattered with the rare, pulsing glimmer of a distant quasar or the dying echo of light from ancient galaxies. The engines hummed in rhythms so low and smooth they could be mistaken for silence. Inside, the quiet was deeper still. Dr. Ellen Marrow stirred from sleep. Her bed was nestled into a padded alcove along the curved interior of the ship's crew habitat. The ceiling above mimicked a slow aurora, soft tendrils of green and violet light that shimmered like breath, controlled by her circadian cycles. It was an old habit she had borrowed from planetary nights, to let light mimic home, even when there was none. She sat up slowly, pulling the warm thermal throw around her shoulders. The cabin held the comfortable scent of filtered air, a trace of sandalwood from her diffuser, and the faint ozone signature of static containment fields outside the walls. Familiar. Predictable. Safe. "Good morning, Ellen," came the voice of the ship's AI. Smooth, melodic. A voice designed to calm. "Ship time is 5:27. There are no scheduled operations until 8 o'clock. Would you like tea?" Ellen smiled softly, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Numa. Earl Grey. Strong. And maybe play the cello suite from yesterday again?" "Of course." As she swung her legs over the bed and touched bare feet to the softly heated floor, the AI activated a quiet composition, low, resonant cello notes winding around the soft hiss of the tea dispenser. The sound filled the space with just enough presence to keep loneliness at bay. There were no windows on Somna Drift. Not real ones. But above her desk, a wall-length screen projected the ship's external view, a digital representation filtered through radiation lenses and rendered as though one could see through the hull. Today, like most days, the expanse beyond was black as ink, with only a few wayward streaks of ion trails and the ghost of a pale nebula far behind. This was what Ellen had come for: silence. Vastness. Solitude. She carried her tea to the workstation, where her logs weighted rows of mission reports, signal archives, minor equipment notes. The usual. But one window pulsed gently in the corner, flagged during her last off-cycle. She opened it. Unidentified harmonic signature. Timestamp 4321.88.105. Detected in band theta 12. Duration 6.2 seconds. Status: anomaly non-repeatable. Her fingers hovered above the console. She frowned slightly. Theta 12 wasn't a band that usually picked up noise, especially not out here. Too far from any known pulsar range. Too shallow for deep background radiation. "Play back the signal," she said. Numa complied. What emerged was soft, almost musical. A rising tone, like a breath drawn through a glass flute, with undercurrents that shimmered and faded in intricate, harmonic patterns. Not quite digital. Not quite natural. Something between. Ellen leaned in. Run analysis. Cross-check with previous logs, known alien datasets, artificial code pulses, and gravitational anomaly libraries. A pause. Then. No match found. Closest correlation is 0.34% with an abandoned Zalari distress beacon, but tonal structure and entropy profile differ significantly. So, not Zalari. Not human. Not random. Where did it come from? Origin estimates place the signal within 0.004 light-years. A moving source. Directional trajectory suggests a small object or derelict orbiting an unlisted gas giant. Would you like to plot a course? Ellen stared into the projected black, as though it might blink back at her. Yes, she said after a moment. Let's go take a look. Hours passed in quiet calibration. She checked the sublight drives, logged her intentions, and confirmed the environmental suits were still at spec. A sense of purpose bloomed in her chest, not excitement, exactly, but curiosity seasoned with the serenity of deep space routine. She'd been out here 107 days. This was the first anomaly worth chasing. The ship adjusted its orientation, thrusters whispering as Somna Drift changed course. The stars did not shift. Instead, the representation on the screen updated subtly, showing a flicker of movement in the darkness. The anomaly's estimated location was a pale blue dot, distant and flickering like a thought not yet remembered. Ellen sipped her tea and leaned back in her chair. The cello played on, and the hum of the engines became her lullaby. Far ahead, the unknown waited, not threatening, not urgent. Just present. Just there. Somewhere in the darkness, something had sung. And now, she was listening. Chapter 2, Echoes from a Lost Moon. It took Somna Drift nearly 18 hours of real time to close the distance. During that time, Dr. Ellen Marrow slept lightly, read fragments from an old Earth novel, ran diagnostics on the signal processor, and tried not to anticipate. She had learned long ago that space rarely moved to match one's eagerness. The still expanse, in particular, answered curiosity with silence more often than revelation. Still, the signal lingered in her thoughts like the ghost of a dream she couldn't shake, a tone half remembered, a song without a voice. Numa's voice came softly, so as not to startle her. Arrival in visual range. Forward scopes activated. Displaying primary object now. Ellen stood, mug in hand, and walked barefoot to the visual display wall. The projection was clearer now, the ship's cameras mapping infrared, electromagnetic scatter, and enhanced visuals into one coherent image. The gas giant was vast, a marbled sphere of lavender and silver, with a crown of slow-moving storms the size of continents. It had no official name. According to the archives, the region had never been mapped, and the gas giant itself was unremarkable. No rings. No satellites. No life. Except there it was. A moon. It wasn't orbiting in a standard path. More like a lazy spiral, unstable, decaying, held tenuously in place by the planet's immense gravity. The moon itself was roughly the size of Mars Phobos, yet far more complex. Not natural. Metallic panels, scorched and pitted with age, formed the surface in irregular tessellations. Great scars ran along its length, some resembling impact craters, others more like surgical incisions. From one side extended a broken antenna dish nearly a kilometer wide, half collapsed inward like the petals of a dying flower. Ellen drew a long, slow breath. "Station," she whispered. "It's not a moon. It's a derelict station." Numa responded, voice tinged with reverence. "Preliminary scans confirm non-natural materials. Energy signature is faint but detectable. Trace atmosphere inside. No biosigns. What about the signal? Origin confirmed. Harmonic transmission source is embedded within the station's equatorial ring." Ellen stared a moment longer. Then, "Prep the shuttle. I want to walk inside." The descent was slow. Ellen piloted the shuttle manually, fingers steady on the controls. Somna Drift held orbit above, silent and watchful. As she approached the structure, its details resolved into strange, elegant chaos. Vines of metallic debris floated near the docking threshold, gently rotating in zero gravity. There were no lights. No beacons. Only the sound of her own breathing in the helmet and the rhythmic thump of her pulse. The docking interface had long since eroded away, so she used a mag tether to clamp onto an exposed spar. Once secured, she stepped from the shuttle and pushed off into the ancient airlock with practiced ease. Inside was shadow and dust. Her helmet lights scanned the corridor, walls lined with unfamiliar conduits, floor grates warped by heat, ceiling tiles half collapsed. Time had taken its toll. Yet here and there, beauty remained, intricate symbols carved into door frames, thread-thin etchings that shimmered when the light hit them just right. Glyphs. Language. Ellen paused, breath-catching. She activated her wrist scanner and began recording. Definitely linguistic. Could be ceremonial or functional. No Rosetta structure, but symmetry suggests a logic base. Her boots crunched softly as she moved forward, deeper into the corridor. The station creaked around her, not in any threatening way, but like a long-abandoned cathedral sighing in sleep. The air was thin but breathable, oxygen maintained at a trace level by some stubborn internal system. She kept her suit sealed, but it fascinated her. Something still worked. As she passed through what may have once been a communal hall, she paused again. The walls were covered in faded murals, swirls of iridescent pigment embedded into the alloy, depicting figures, not quite humanoid, slender, elongated, with arms that tapered into delicate filaments. Eyes wide and silver, each one positioned in a different gesture, some reaching skyward, some curled into spirals, some disintegrating into clouds of starlight. And all of them were facing inward, toward the center of the room, where a dais rose from the floor, empty now, but surrounded by curving metal like petals around a bloom. Ellen circled it slowly. A place of gathering, she murmured. Maybe mourning. Maybe transformation. She activated her recorder. Field log, entry 431. Subject, derelict alien structure, preliminary observations. Status, no active life. No visible defense mechanisms. Notes, internal space implies cultural sophistication. Possible ritual space or communication hub. Signal origin still deeper within. Proceeding with caution. She descended a spiral corridor lit only by her suit lights and the soft green glow of bioluminescent moss clinging to the walls. It pulsed gently, like sleeping embers. The further down she traveled, the quieter the world became. Even the creaks faded. At last, she reached a chamber unlike the others. This one was circular, with smooth black walls and a single spire rising from the center. The spire was crystalline, translucent, fractured in places, but still alive with an inner glow. Around its base, concentric rings of metal floated just above the floor, slowly spinning in place. The signal was stronger here. Not just heard now, but felt a pressure in her chest, like the low thrum of a cello's string reverberating through her ribs. Ellen stood still. "Play back the anomaly," she whispered. Numa's voice emerged in her helmet. The signal played, rising, falling, whispering through frequencies that hovered just below human comprehension. And the crystal responded. Its glow pulsed with each note, harmonizing, not echoing, not replaying, but conversing. As if the song were a question it recognized. Or a memory. Ellen approached slowly, raising a hand toward the spire. Her fingers hovered inches from its surface. Heat radiated from it, but not uncomfortably. Instead, it felt like a campfire on a cold night, gentle, magnetic, intimate. "Do you remember?" she whispered. "To whom were you singing?" The crystal offered no answer. But its light dimmed, then flared again, once, twice. Almost like a heartbeat. Or a response. She sat cross-legged on the floor. Quiet. Listening. Hours passed, or perhaps none at all. Eventually, she stood and left a beacon in the chamber, marking it for return. As she made her way back through the silent halls, the murals seemed to shift in tone, less mournful now, more patient. Waiting. Outside the shuttle, she looked back once more at the ruined station. In the dark, it no longer seemed dead. Just dormant. "Return to Somna Drift," she instructed softly. As the shuttle broke free of the decaying orbit, the signal faded from her instruments, but not from her mind. The harmonic pattern still hummed behind her eyes, like an echo she couldn't quite trace. She closed her eyes and leaned back in the flight seat. Something had called her here. Something had sung across the void. And now it waited for her to understand. Chapter 3, The Dreaming Core. The shuttle docked silently back aboard Somna Drift. Ellen's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what she'd seen. The station was not merely a relic, it was a story, a whisper suspended in time. Her thoughts were interrupted by Numa's soft voice. "Doctor, analysis of the crystal spire suggests it is a form of data storage, quantum entangled and biologically integrated. It is not simply a device, it may be a repository of memories, emotions, and consciousness." Ellen stared at the holoscreen. The crystal's structure was complex, fractal layers folding into impossible geometries, glowing faintly with pulses of light like slow, measured breaths. The idea that it housed memories, not just data, felt profound. "Prepare the extraction sequence," she said softly. I want to bring the core aboard, safely. The extraction was delicate. The core was suspended in 0G within the deepest chamber of the station, tethered by faint magnetic fields and ancient tech still humming with power. Ellen's gloves brushed against the crystal's surface as the magnetic locks disengaged one by one. The light inside the core pulsed brighter, almost aware. Once secured inside the containment field aboard Somna Drift, the core hummed softly in its cradle. The ship's lights dimmed around it, creating a small sanctuary of shadows and glowing blue. Ellen sat beside it, still uncertain how to begin. Can you interface with it, Numa? There was a pause. I am designed for linguistic and pattern recognition, but this is beyond code. I will attempt to synchronize neural pathways through your interface pod. Ellen nodded and settled into the chair connected to the ship's neurointerface. Sensors brushed lightly over her temples, and she took a slow breath, letting the calm flood her. The world shifted. Colors bloomed behind her eyelids. Shapes moved like slow tides of light and shadow. She was no longer in the ship. Not really. The core's memories were not images, but feelings, deep waves of longing, hope, loss, and peace. She found herself in a place like a twilight forest, but made of light. Trees glowed softly, leaves drifting like sparks. Around her, beings moved, ethereal, shifting forms that shimmered between solid and dream. They reached out with tendrils of thought, welcoming her, sharing their stories without words. She understood without understanding. This was the final journey of a civilization, one that had escaped the confines of physical form and traveled beyond time in search of tranquility. The drift, the place they called home, was a shared dream space, a refuge from entropy and decay. But something had gone wrong. A fracture in their unity had left echoes behind, memories that could not rest, signals sent out across the void, hoping for connection. Ellen felt their sorrow, but also their acceptance. Suddenly, Numa's voice called her back. Doctor, your neural activity is spiking. Synchronization is unstable. Recommend disengagement to prevent neurological feedback. Ellen took a slow breath, reluctant but knowing. The twilight forest faded gently, replaced by the soft glow of the ship's cabin. The core hummed quietly beside her, alive but silent. She opened her eyes, feeling changed. Whatever they were running from, or toward, it's a kind of peace, isn't it? Numa responded with a softness she hadn't heard before. Yes, Doctor. A peace beyond time and loss. Ellen looked at the core and smiled faintly. We'll need to listen more, to learn their language fully. This is only the beginning. That night, she slept with the core's gentle pulse echoing in the ship. Dreams came easily, strange, beautiful, and sometimes bittersweet. In the quiet dark, Ellen felt less alone than she had in months. Somewhere out there, a civilization still whispered, waiting for their story to be heard. Chapter 4, Through the Drift. The moment Ellen's consciousness touched the core's memory stream again, she knew she was crossing a threshold. It was no longer just a repository of echoes, it was a gateway, a liminal space between existence and oblivion. Her body reclined safely in the neurointerface pod aboard Somna Drift, but her mind soared beyond the constraints of time, space, and even physicality itself. The threshold. She opened her eyes in a world without edges, a twilight realm where colors bled and mingled like ink in water. Gravity was optional, and light bent like ripples on a pond. The drift was not a place, but a condition, a shared dream space forged by the ancient civilization as refuge from the entropy that gnawed at their fading universe. Around her, infinite forms shimmered, figures both humanoid and alien, woven from strands of light and thought. They moved slowly, as if underwater, their expressions serene but tinged with melancholy. Ellen reached out, her hand passing through one such form, a being who radiated soft pulses of azure light. It spoke without sound, thoughts woven directly into her mind. You are here to listen. The collective memory. Ellen was shown visions, but these were not simple images. They were immersive experiences, sensations, emotions, memories compressed into waves of pure understanding. She felt the joy of creation, the warmth of shared existence, the ache of inevitable dissolution. The beings had transcended the physical long ago, merging their consciousness into the drift, existing simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. But a fracture had split their collective will, a wound that rippled through the shared dream. Ellen felt their longing for peace, but also the pain of isolation, echoes trapped in loops, voices calling without reply. The message. One presence approached, more vivid than the rest. It was neither hostile nor sorrowful, simply resigned and serene. It extended a hand, and Ellen felt a flood of understanding, a message meant to be carried forward. We sought to escape death by becoming dream, but dreams must end. Tell those who listen, peace is found not in fleeing time, but in embracing it. The drift is a sanctuary, but also a passage. Ellen's mind hummed with the weight of those words. The meaning was clear, yet elusive. She had glimpsed a truth about existence itself, that all things must move through cycles of birth, decay, and renewal. The return. The collective began to dissolve, their forms fading into threads of light that wound back into the core. The dreamscape shimmered and softened, a slow surrender to silence. Ellen felt herself pulled back, a gentle current guiding her through layers of space and thought. Her eyes opened to the dim glow of the Somna Drift's cabin. The core rested quietly, its light diminished but steady. Numa's voice was steady but held an undertone of awe. Synchronization complete. Neural feedback minimal. Your neural scans indicate profound cognitive expansion. Ellen exhaled slowly, feeling the truth of that. This was never just data or memory, she said softly. It's a living consciousness, fractured and seeking closure. Quiet resolve. In the stillness that followed, Ellen sat beside the core, feeling the gentle pulse of light against her skin. The vast loneliness of space felt different now, less a void and more a cradle for stories waiting to be heard. Her mission had changed. She was no longer an observer. She was a keeper of stories, a bridge between worlds. She smiled faintly. The drift had shown her not an end, but a beginning. Chapter 5. The Luminous Return. The silence inside Somna Drift was softer now, almost reverent. After days of communion with the dreaming core, Ellen Marrow felt a calm that was unfamiliar but deeply welcome. The vast, cold expanse beyond the ship's hull seemed less like emptiness and more like a tapestry woven from countless stories, each thread pulsing with life, loss, and hope. The core rested safely in its containment field, a glowing heart beating quietly in the ship's belly. Ellen often found herself drawn to it, sitting nearby in the dimmed cabin light, tracing the flickering pulses as if they were a secret language she was slowly learning to read. The message to carry. Ellen had spent the last several days decoding the core's transmissions, working closely with Numa to translate the harmonic language embedded within its light. It was a painstaking process, one that required patience and openness beyond typical scientific rigor. The core's message was clear. The ancient civilization had not simply disappeared, they had chosen to dissolve their physical forms into the drift itself, becoming one with the cosmic dream. But there was more. A plea. Remember us not as ghosts, but as guides. The cycle continues. The drift flows eternal. Ellen whispered this to the quiet cabin, her voice gentle like a lullaby. We are the current, she said softly. Not just the drift. Preparing for home. The journey back to known space would take weeks. Ellen felt the weight of isolation differently now. She wasn't alone in the void, never truly alone. The stories she carried within her were companions, luminous and patient. She recorded a final entry in her mission log. The drift has taught me that endings are beginnings in disguise. The silence between stars is not empty, it is full of the whispers of those who came before. Their song is not lost. It is waiting for those willing to listen. As Somna Drift adjusted its course, Ellen prepared the ship for the transition back into inhabited space. Systems were checked, supplies reviewed, and communications reset. Yet she lingered near the core, her hand resting lightly on the containment field. It pulsed warmly beneath her fingers. A vision in the night. That night, sleep came differently. Ellen dreamed of the drift, not as a distant place, but as a living entity. She stood at the edge of a great ocean of light, stars swirling like bioluminescent creatures beneath the surface. The beings she had met there reached out to her again, not with words, but with a shared breath of hope. "You are part of us now," they said. "And we are part of you." She woke with a smile, feeling the warmth of that connection ripple through her chest. A new dawn. Weeks later, the familiar stars of home rose on the ship's viewport. Ellen felt a mixture of relief and longing. The terrestrial world awaited, with its bustling life, unpredictable rhythms, and tangible gravity. But she carried the drift with her, folded carefully inside her heart. As Somna Drift entered orbit above her home planet, the mission control station contacted her. "Welcome back, Dr. Marrow. We've been following your signals. Your discovery will change everything." Ellen smiled softly. "Yes," she replied, "because we are all part of a larger current. And the drift flows eternal." Epilogue: The Keeper of Stories. Ellen stepped onto the planet's surface, the cool air smelling sharply of earth and rain. She looked up at the sky, stars still visible in the fading twilight. The drift had whispered its secrets. Now it was her turn to share them. With quiet resolve, she began her new journey not as a lone explorer lost in the void, but as a keeper of stories, a bridge between worlds, and a bearer of luminous hope. End of The Luminous Drift.